Hello, welcome to the housing sector. It is my great pleasure, as always, to have Suz from SHAC back with us again. And by chance, we are both wearing very similar jumpers. How are you, Suz?
Very good. Thank you, Ben. Yes, yes, it's getting to that autumnal weather.
It is. It's very much felt it. Today is the 3rd of September, and yeah, it felt it. And all the kids were back at school. Traffic was on the road. Yeah,
Yeah,
summer is done. Suz, today we are talking about a national residents, tenants, and union, aren't we?
yeah, yeah.
Okay. What is the correct title, first of all?
Well, the working title, National Tenants and Residents Union, and what so SHAC isn't saying we are the National Tenants and Residents Union. What we're saying is we realize that we really need to have one. And if we can bring loads of people together, if we can pull in the power of the trade unions and other parts of the labor movement, we can get one off the ground. But if we never try, it's one of those things, it seems to me, having been knocking around in the housing campaign sphere for a while, it just feels like everyone agrees that this is something that is needed, but nobody's really kind of plotted out a way to get there. And that's what we're trying to do. And I'm not even saying that we've got it right, but because we're trying to do it through a democratic process, hopefully that will make sure that we hit on the right pathway in the end, by just involving as many people as possible, really.
Okay, so as a resident, we've got a union up and running, and I join it. What
Mm,
benefits are in it for me?
yeah. So I mean, that's going to be the nub of it, because you would have to charge people. So if you're charging people, what are they getting? What are they getting for their money? And I think, like a trade union, it would absolutely have to offer casework. So the kind of individual casework support that is so desperately needed. And none of the housing campaign groups and very few of the housing charities have actually got the capacity to offer that kind of casework support. So somebody who will sit down with you, look through your tenancy, give you advice, who will understand the law, will be able to advise you on what you can do, on what your rights are, what your responsibilities are, what the landlord's rights and responsibilities are, that kind of thing. And possibly even further, I mean, as an aspiration, I think as part of that, the way a trade union would be also, if you did have to go to court, be able to actually support you with the cost of that and legal representation, which again is something that most people just in the current system just don't have access to. But really, to build a power base, or the idea is that we build a power base, which involves a lot of kind of campaign tactics, like the kind of direct action, like occupations of empty estates, for example, or instead be demolished that shouldn't be, rent strikes, service charge strikes, those kind of tactics that people might use in an organized way to really create a power base, and ultimately what equal to and opposite to the power of landlords. And there just isn't anything at the moment. And all of when you hear government talking about it, and we can maybe touch on this initiative that maybe seems to have appeared from nowhere, and the way government talk about it, what they talk about is the tenant's voice, or the resident's voice. We need to have something that will, we need to be hearing for tenants and residents. What they mean is we need to have a pressure valve on people's anger and frustrations, so that they can be on some kind of panel or something like that, and it will just help take the pressure off a little bit. But it won't affect any kind of meaningful change. It won't change the balance of power, which at the moment, the lion's share of that sits with the landlords. And over the years, the rights of tenants and the support for tenants and residents has been chipped away. It's been chipped away through loss of legal aid for housing cases, for example. It's been chipped away through the cuts to tenancy support by councils and lots of other, these really vicious council cuts that supported people to stay in their homes, that would maybe mediate with their landlords and things like that. All of that has gone because of the squeeze on councils. So over the years, people have lost the kind of safety net that was there for them, haven't they? And we need to replace that, but we want to replace it with something that is genuinely tenant and resident led. So it has to be something really democratic. So basically, that was a very long answer to your short question. It would offer casework, but it would also offer the means to kind of campaign and lobby government and get our stories in the press and that and change the narrative, that kind of thing.
And that's piqued my interest because as someone who stood alone in court facing
Mm,
down, my landlord's super group of lawyers and them all having their private office and a group of them and people on conference phones, just me and my wife. That's something that is definitely needed. And the other thing, I think we're all fed up of hearing the voice of the resident. We need to engage with, and it's this
mm.
tokenistic, I've called it, this echo chamber of the tokenistic tenant who goes on there and says, and it's a pressure valve is a great way of putting that. I didn't realize that there once was legal support for housing issues, and this is something that's been
Mm.
taken away. I had no idea about that.
Yeah, I think the cuts to legal aid. I mean, apart from anything else, a lot of people do legal aid work because it just pays so badly. It's they can always earn a lot more doing private work. So there's very little interest in legal aid cases anyway because it's fallen so far behind. It hasn't kept pace with inflation. It's like a lot of other council public sector funded services. But also, I think its remit has been cut down. So I think there were certain types of housing cases that people could get support with. I mean, I'm not a legal expert, but that's my understanding is that at one time there were some kinds of legal aid cases. Then quite a long time ago, I think that was cut back. That people don't need that. They don't need to have that, as part of legal aid, and so it's kind of like everything else. And I mean, there's one really important point. I think, when we talk about, we've always been very wary of kind of the law. Like a lot of tenants and residents would like us to say, well, we'll take on your case, and there are so many that have got obvious merit, even to somebody who isn't a legal practitioner. We know that you could be spending hundreds of thousands on that, and you'd still maybe solve one case. It's not making an impact. Um, but but although we have looked at kind of strategic legal, we have got on service charges, we are looking at strategic legal stuff. But I think the thing that I noticed, being a trade union activist, is that if there's a new bit of legislation or a new right to workers, employers know that where you've got a union presence in your workplace, that if they start to breach that, and they don't comply with the legislation, then those workers are going to have the means. It's not a barrier. There's no barrier to getting access to justice, or not anywhere near as big a chasm as tenants and residents have. So the employers kind of self-regulate. Then they know that if they breach the law, people are there is going to be a consequence to it. Therefore, they'll do stuff to try and comply with the law. And that's exactly what we're not seeing with landlords, isn't it? That they feel that they can just totally disregard the law because one tenant might be able to somehow represent themselves in court and get something, but there's thousands of tenants here. They're not going to be able to do it. Maybe one out of 1,000 might go to court. So it's worth my while to just, ignore it, pay up occasionally if I have to with a bit of compensation, but the vast majority of people won't have access. So legal rights, then, when you enshrine something in law, like a WARB's law, you can enshrine it in law, but it's not going to change the behavior of landlords because those landlords know most people can't afford to enforce it. Therefore, we can just get away with it. So this is why we talk about this big enforcement gap when it comes to legislation.
I say that you keep dropping out a bit. The conversation keeps flowing, but for people at home that are watching, the video's a bit jittery. It's probably the rain outside or my computer or but the content is great. But there are a couple of times you dropped out, but we keep these raw and unedited. We don't muck about with any of it.
Is the sound okay?
The sound's fine. You're coming
Okay.
through, so everyone's able to hear. And if you are one of the people who listens to these podcasts, you won't notice. So forgive me. And hello to all you dog walkers out there. The the thing that I find is, and this is quite, I found when I went through my own legal troubles, it was clear it was all threat, and it was never supposed
Mm.
to go to court. And I do worry about how many just give up and go, no, we
Yeah,
can't have this, and we'll stay
yeah,
silent. So I think it's vitally important to have that. And of course, you then set precedent, don't you? Which
yeah.
makes it easier for others to follow. Now, this is something that I'm sure the housing association world are probably quite afraid of, aren't they?
Mm. Tenant power and resident power, genuine power, not just, as you say, an echo chamber that they can park someone in. They are scared of it. And we're starting to see them talk more about the tenant voice. But what they want to do is control it. They want something that is going to be under their control and not under the control of tenants and residents. And that's what we're really determined is not going to happen with the Tenants and Residents Union. It has to be democratically controlled by members. So even if it comes to a point where it can employ people, those people, you might have administrators or whatever, but people who are in power within that organization should be elected because, that's the best way we know of. It's not a perfect system, but it's the best way we know of making sure people are accountable. And there are lots of other things that you can do to really try and ensure that accountability, so that it can't be hijacked by people who maybe have an alliance or an affiliation with the landlords. It won't be a kind of landlord-led organisation. But it will be speaking to landlords, so it will be a way. We don't, we're not isolationist in the way that we're thinking about it. They will be speaking to landlords, and there will be some landlords, especially the smaller ones. We're not talking about the big corporates like Notting Hill Genesis, Green Square Accord or others. There will be some smaller ones who with it, but I think most of the big landlords will have the attitude that you're talking about, that they will fear it. But it has to come. There has to be a rebalancing of power, doesn't there? Really, it's causing so much harm to people. Every aspect of the housing crisis, is causing so much harm to people. It's almost like, how can we not do it? How can we afford not to do this?
We've already spoken about some elements, and we won't mention here, but some elements are already going, oh, we need a union, but they definitely seem too closely aligned, certainly
Yeah,
for my
yeah,
liking, and that was a concern. Is there a fear? I mean, you and I have already spoken about some elements trying to get a union of their own, but they're too closely
yeah.
aligned. Is there a fear that if you don't get it up and running quick, the likes of a National Housing Federation will do this sort of nice, nicely polished version that the bigger associations can say we agree with and we support, and
Yeah.
it not have the true tenants at the heart of it?
Yeah, and what tenants want, I think, from and tenants and residents, what they want is something that is gonna be a forum for action. What landlords want is, and government wants as well. I mean, this is very much the kind of government perspective on it. Is something that can advise, a body that can advise on housing policy. And when they talk about advising on housing policy, it's like the government consultations. We'll frame the questions that we want to ask you. We'll take all of your answers. We'll decide which ones kind of align with what we were planning to do anyway, and we'll say, right, we've listened to everybody, and this is the best course of action, and it's exactly what they will do anyway. So if we look at things like, the sort of, how, there's a consultation going on at the moment, for example, um, which is about rent conversion and how rent conversions should be done. Well, actually, most people must not agree with rent conversion. They don't want it to happen at all. But that wasn't the question that was being asked. Should it happen or shouldn't it happen? The question being asked was, how is the best way to, to implement it? So we've already got an idea of what we're going to do. We're not interested in your views on that, but just tell us what mechanism might work best, and it's that kind of thing that we want to get away with. So if you get away from, rather. So if you imagine, if we did have a powerful tenants and residents union, it can be lobbying government. It would have far more power to lobby government than any of us just talking to our own MPs or, doing that kind of thing. It would have the power. The landlords have got a very, very powerful machine, haven't they? And government knows that they need to listen to the landlords, and will listen to the landlords. But of course, we don't have anything that is the equivalent of that. So, we do indeed want to influence housing policy, but we want to do it on our terms, not on government's terms.
This is the thing that I get, because I get lots of emails. I get about 10 emails a week, and they're always from people who, first of all, feel like it's just happening to them, they're alone. And then I say, well, I can support you best I can, but I need to see sort of emails, chain of evidence, so I'm not taken for libel. And I don't want to share that. I'm afraid. And I always
Mm,
think, why are people afraid? And they're afraid because they think they're on their own, aren't they? And what they
yeah,
don't
yeah.
realize is there's millions of people in the same boat.
Yeah, yeah. That's the same with the post office scandal, wasn't it? Only on a massive scale. I mean, people affected by the post office scandal probably said that would probably say that the scale, thank you. They wouldn't want it any bigger. But it was each of them being told, but you're the only person who's experienced it. And because they didn't really have any way to kind of network and connect with other people and find out, and obviously because people were ashamed and they felt like it was them doing something wrong. They must have done something wrong, and that's what they were being told. Um, Everybody was kind of in this very isolated position, and then we saw obviously what happened when everybody came together and brought that power together, and it absolutely is that. If entire estates, if you get outrageous service charge, or if your landlord is refusing to deal with horrendous damp and mold, if everybody just refuses to pay rent, the landlord will have to listen. They will have to do something about it. But as you say, people are very, very intimidated, and it's not surprising. I mean, that's their home. The idea that you might kind of trigger the loss of your home is a terrifying prospect. And that's what creates that power imbalance, isn't it? And so we need something that can, act as an opposite but equal force. It has to be equally strong. That tenant or resident has to know that there is a massive opinion movement, things that people would be far too intimidated to take on their employer on their own. But because they've got that collective, they can sometimes say, well, sod the law, we could go to court, but we're not going to do that. We're just gonna withdraw our labor, or we are gonna force the landlord to sit down and negotiate with us and listen to us. But we're dealing with some very big vested interests, aren't we? We're pushing back against some very, very powerful institutions. So I don't want to paint a picture as if we think it would be a really easy thing, but I think we know the scale of the job. It's just if we never start it, we're never going to end up there, are we?
No, I think it's vitally important. It's very much needed, and it's something that's obviously going to grow. And the more people we can get on board, the better. And I do think it's something that will be genuinely feared by the sector, and they
Mm,
shouldn't. They should be embracing it. The fact that, and we keep talking, Grenfell. There's been no prosecutions,
yeah,
and it didn't.
exactly.
I thought if anything's going to come out of Grenfell, it's going to be the fact that it's going to kickstart everything. We're going to get the safety. We're going to have safe buildings, fire procedures, and it just hasn't. It just keeps getting watered down, and it hasn't quite caught the public zeitgeist like the post office scandal did. And I
Mm,
said it before: we need an ITV drama premiere or a Netflix drama premiere to get things going. Look, what are the next steps? There's a meeting coming up, isn't there?
yeah. A conference on the 11th of October, and it's in London and it's online. So I have to close the in-person registrations soon because we've had so many. I need to look at the latest batch of registrations. We are very near capacity. It's at the Indian YMCA, which has got great transport links. But there is a Zoom link, so people will be able to register even if they can't come along in person. We've set out a vision paper. We're just drafting that at the moment. It's not finalised, but everybody will have that vision paper ahead of the conference that has registered with us, and we'll share it as well more broadly, which will start the debate. So the aim of the conference, the vision paper really sets out the kind of structure that we would envisage it having, kind of how it might have members, but also people that might, or TRAs that are already set up, tenant and resident associations that are already set up, that might want to affiliate, stay as they are, but affiliate and then benefit from the support of this bigger organisation. All of that is kind of incorporated into the paper. The next step would be to set up a steering group, and it really would be the role of the steering group to take that to the next level, which is really engaging with trade unions, trying to get some seed funding in place for this to start building and start happening, really. So bringing, and we just welcome anybody who wants to come on board and help make that happen. The people who will be part of the steering group, there'll be lots of people who've got lots of good ideas. We know that loads of people out there have got very good ideas, but the steering group will really be a group of people who've got some time to devote to it, really, and actually get it moving and onto the next level, really. We would envisage that we would like the trade union movement to support this in the way that, for example, they supported the formation of the Labour Party when they all came together and created that. We would like this to be something that they would take a similar approach to. It very much is a workplace issue. And I think all of the unions have policy that recognises that, but they haven't actually taken that any further. So we can say to them, look, we've got this vehicle that will allow you to sort of take that agenda forward. If you think about unions that represent teachers, for example, that represent, nurses, that represent, ordinary front line kind of tradespeople, these people are all going to have housing issues. Young people working in hospitality will have struggles with housing. So it's a workplace issue, and we want the trade union movement to kind of get involved. But I think it needs a committee to really get that up and running. So it won't be a SHAC thing anymore at that point. It will be something that is kind of jointly owned by the steering committee.
I think it's so good to hear, and I'm looking forward to it. I shall be there in London. We'll confirm what we're wearing before we go down.
Yeah.
I'll
So we
put
can make sure we're matching. Yeah.
matching or not matching. Well, we're going. I'll put links and QR codes. Is there anything people who are watching this at home, or even dare I suggest people from within inside the sector, is there anything they can do where they can get more information, support
Yeah,
it?
we've got a page. If they go onto our website, the top of the menu bar, they'll see the National Tenants and Residents Union. What people can do if they're part of a tenants or residents association, it doesn't even have to be formally constituted. It could just be a few neighbours have got together, formed a little group to help them engage with their landlord, and they would like to put their name to it, because I think that will very much help with the trade union movement. That we say, look, there are a lot of these. We deliberately targeted that kind of grassroots level. We do have some housing kind of campaign groups as well as supporters. Supporters at this stage just means they agree with the idea. They think it's a good idea. But I think that will help persuade the trade union. The more of those that we have, it will help persuade the trade unions that actually this is an organisation that has got the kind of broad support from the kind of people who would be its end users of the services. So people can do that. The form on our website, they just need to fill in the form with the name of their group, and that will really help us. But the main thing is just to popularise the idea, talk to people about it. Come along if you can, or maybe if you've got a group, maybe just delegate one person even to come along or sit in on the conference and sort of contribute their ideas, really.
From little acorns come great things.
Exactly.
And I think we are so fragmented in all our different little groups. And being that we're fragmented, have you sort of tested it with some of the other housing campaigners, activists, we want to call the likes of Quojo, House Scoffin? Are they thinking, yeah, this is a
Yeah.
good idea, we can support this?
Yeah. That's the like I said, everybody has talked about how this is something that we need. It's just that nobody's kind of scoped it out yet or tried to scope it out. And I don't want to pretend like I think we've got some brilliant, we've got everything worked out. We absolutely haven't. So some of them have kind of put their name to it on our website. Some of them we've spoken to are very supportive, but didn't want to put their name actually on the website yet, because there's nothing there to kind of it's an idea at the moment rather than an actual entity. But certainly that the idea of the steering group is that we would have representatives from lots of different housing campaign groups. And I think that is essential. I think that is something that really has to be part of it, because they've all got their particular specialism, as it might be that they work in a particular area. Harry Scoffin, you mentioned, obviously works with the whole kind of fleecehold stuff. So they've all got their very specific, areas of work, and that experience will be really valuable to make sure that the National Tenants and Residents Union is a genuinely representative and really incorporates all of their needs as much as possible.
Are we getting cross fertilization from other unions, from the teachers' unions, from the nurses' unions, education? Yeah. Because the home is a very bedrock. If you've got a healthy home, you're a productive member of society. So sick days and all these issues that the other unions are having to deal with can probably be fixed if you've got a home that's safe.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's absolutely why we say it is a workplace issue. People going off sick because and we give the statistics in our vision paper from our survey, our workplace impact survey. People going off sick because they either, they've had asthma triggered by damp and mold in the home, or suffered an injury in the home, things like that. So it's very much, but it's very much a workplace issue. But that's the stage to come, is really that engagement. Like I say, most trade unions have got some work around housing, but it's still maybe sitting on the periphery of what they do. And we think that this is a way that they can really make it a kind of a core part in that sense. And one of the other things, and one of the major benefits of working with the trade union movement, something we all suffer for is how do we reach people? How do we find people? How do I know whether my neighbour 3 doors down is also a GSA tenant or a Peabody tenant or whatever, because it's, we're all street properties or whatever it is. How do we find out who? Well, the trade unions, obviously, Unison and Unite both have over 1 million members each. If they can be a vehicle to get information out to people and say, if you're a Peabody tenant, sign up here or do this, or, we've got this big protest happening, or Notting Hill Genesis or something like that. So they can add a lot more than just providing the funding. They can also help us reach people that would be very difficult for any of our housing campaign groups to meet, to reach and get hold of. So, that's another kind of synergy that could work really well. They get the benefit of kind of fulfilling the policies on housing that they've, that have been passed at their conferences. We get the benefit of being able to reach a lot more people than we would if we were trying to pay for advertising or something like that. So I think that would be a really key focus for the steering group, would have to be about that engagement with the trade unions and looking at what policies are in place, and then who do they need to speak to, and planning all of that stage out. Yeah, so plenty of work to get your teeth into once you're on the steering group.
Well, count me in. We'll do whatever we can. I think it's a great idea, and I think it's long overdue. And I thought about it a while back. I'm going to do this. I thought, no, I'm not. After one evening of, whoa, that isn't something I can do. Suz, first of all, I'm going to apologise to everyone for the slightly jittery video. We'll put the weather and the rain on the line and all of that stuff. It takes me back to 1997. Thank you very much indeed. We'll get all those links up, and people can sign up, and let's just get the ball rolling, and we'll see people in London.
Yeah, great stuff. Thank you as always, Ben. It's always a real pleasure to come on and have these discussions with you. Thank you.